Welcome to From Campus to Careers, the Careers and Placements podcast, where we help Aston students take the next steps towards their future career. I'm Christy from the Careers and Placements team, and this is the first episode in a special 4-part series where we are promoting the Aston Power Skills. The Power Skills have been embedded into every undergraduate course here at Aston and are designed to help our students be prepared for the modern workplace and global challenges ahead. One of our 4 power skills is AI and digital, which just so happens to be one of the hottest topics surrounding the job market right now. We will be discussing how AI is changing the world of work, the skills employers are looking for, and what students could do today to prepare for a rapidly evolving future. Today, we are joined by Tahira Suleman, who is the founder of AIQual. She helps businesses to understand where AI can actually make a real difference, improving how they work and reducing risks within their organisation as well. Tahira is also currently working on a national AI skills and competency framework with the Alan Turing Institute, and she's here today to help us to understand how AI is changing the jobs market and what you as a student can do to be ready for that changing market. So without further ado, let's get on with the podcast. So welcome to the podcast, Tahira. I wanted to start with if you could just give us a little bit of an intro to you, share a bit about your journey with AIQual, just so we can learn a little bit more about that to start with.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This is very exciting. So I started AIQual about a year ago now. And it's not that I've only been working in AI for about a year, but I've been working with a number of businesses over a number of years, basically implementing technology, different types of technology, not just artificial intelligence, whether that's data cleanup, embedding CRMs and ERP systems, and basically back office stuff, right? So that went on for a number of years. And as artificial intelligence started to emerge and it started to sort of enter the hype cycle, I'd say from the point of ChatGPT being launched, businesses were suddenly more interested, said, okay, how can we use generative AI and how can we get a better return on money? And we basically picked up the principles from classic traditional digital transformation that we were doing in businesses and said, okay, well, let's position this service all around an artificial intelligence qualification framework. So we're not doing AI for the sake of AI. We're making sure that we are putting artificial intelligence into organizations where it's needed. So that was the thinking behind AIQual.
Fab. And how has that experience, I suppose, your background before AI? Could you tell us a little bit more about that journey before AIQual, sorry?
Well, okay, to begin with, I'm a scientist. Yes. So I spent many, many years in science, many years working in the lab. And actually, the transferable skill that I got from there was, in large, critical thinking. Looking at an answer in front of you and going, maybe there's a different way to solve it. Actually using creativity and scientific methodology or scientific protocol to go, I'm going to use that creative problem solving, and I'm also going to use that, showing my method in terms of how I do this. And that involved a lot of relationships with directors, C-suite, board members, all that kind of stuff, in giving them confidence in whatever decision it was they were going to invest in. So once you've gone through that process of being a scientist and, having to make that argument for yourself or making that argument for your idea, particularly when I was doing my PhD, to actually coming out of the other side and using it as a transferable skill. So my original background for about 15 years was as a scientist, not as an artificial intelligence person, and then I career pivoted.
Yeah, and I suppose it's how the job market evolves. It's kind of like all those years ago when you were a scientist, the job titles now that we have with AI perhaps weren't so prevalent as they are now. And it's the exciting time that we're in. So how has that experience in science operations and problem solving, do you think, how do you think that shaped your approach to AI now that you're kind of, come up with AIQual? How do you think that background has shaped it?
I think one of the things that you see in AI especially on social media. And I'm going to reference LinkedIn here. I don't know how much of your audience actually use LinkedIn, but a lot of the business decision makers use LinkedIn, right? And there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn. So there's a lot of people that say you should do it this way, you must do it this way. And normally it's because they're associated with selling the product that is the solution to that problem that they tell you have. So what you need to do as someone, with a background in science and with a background in that whole critical thinking set, is you come in and you go, that's wrong because it sounds wrong. And I've done this research and this research is not compatible with the advert that I'm seeing. And therefore working through that noise and coming up with a solution, showing your method essentially, and being able to say to those same C-suite, those same board members, those same directors, those same business decision makers, actually, you're going to do it this way. So that method has all been around critical thinking, how you base it and how you look through the chaff to go, we're not going to pluck at the headlines. We're going to go a layer deeper and we're going to understand what this technology actually brings. And that is the entirety of AIQual and where it originated from.
I love that. Yeah, LinkedIn can be noisy.
Very much so. Yes,
with what's out there. But you raise a really good point about the people that are on there using it potentially being, the biggest decision makers in business, and they wanting to go on that platform to find out sometimes what other organisations are doing without having that conversation necessarily. You can go and look, can't you? So no, really, really interesting. So how do you think AI is reshaping the jobs market, and with that, what industries do you think are going to feel an impact from AI the most?
These are two questions, and they're two huge questions. And I'm going to try and break them up. And you might have to remind me of the second half when I get there. So there's been a lot of research and a lot of attempted research in this. At the moment, we do not have a full vision of job displacement. There are some reports, and one of the reports that came out from the British Standards Institute showed that the vast majority, I think they reported 2/3 of business decision makers, and I'm talking about, those C-suites, those directors, those hiring managers, that have made an assumption that artificial intelligence will basically reduce hiring, right? So that's the impact that people are expected to see in the job market. That research is repeated again and again in other places where it's a perception, it's a feeling, but we have to distance ourselves. This is where we do the critical thinking and go, this is a feeling that a lot of people are having. I mean, people talk about Elon Musk. Let's talk about the headlines for a minute. And, I think there was a headline the other day that said by 2030, people won't need to work anymore. To me, that's absurd because there's no process, there's no thinking that goes into that. And actually, it's just a noise, in my opinion.
Bit of clickbait.
a bit of clickbait. But yeah, so there's a perception and there's a reality. The reality is that there is no current mass job displacement. The reality is that we cannot pinpoint it. And one of the reasons that we cannot pinpoint it is because of the pandemic, interestingly. So before the pandemic, lots of people had lots of jobs. Early part of pandemic, lots of hiring in tech specifically. Absolutely everyone was getting hired. There were more jobs than there were people. It was insane. Market correction happened. Fewer people, so people started losing their jobs. Big companies like Amazon start making redundancies. So you see in that techscape that there's actually now less jobs for more people. So you go through that peak and you come down to the other side. It's difficult to pinpoint how much of that is market correction and how much of that is owed to AI. It's also difficult to verify when a company says, we're going to rely on artificial intelligence now for recruitment, and actually instead of recruiting new people, we're going to rely on AI. It's difficult to discern how much of that is true. We've also seen businesses like Klarna attempt that and fail. So we've seen big organizations, Duolingo is another one, that have gone, okay, well, let's go towards AI instead, and we can reduce our staff, and therefore we can reduce our overheads and reduce our spend. But actually it didn't work like that, because you've always got that compromise of somebody might go, well, you've injected AI into your product and I don't like it anymore. Therefore, I'm not going to use it. So you've suddenly devalued your company. So all of this, so it's an incredibly complex formula, if you like. It's not as straightforward as AI happened, therefore job displacement, and now no one's got a job, and by 2030 no one will ever need to work again, and we'll all be on benefits or universal basic income. There's no trend to show that at the moment. The second part of the question, I believe, was which part of industry is going to see the most impact?
Yeah, which industries do you think will feel it the most?
So at the moment, and again, this is there's no good, solid, hard data on this. So I'm going to try and give as much information as I can to your listener. But in law, we're seeing at the moment that there are a lot of law firms that have a lot of repetitive work, particularly in those junior roles. But actually, it's not just about jobs, it's about tasks. So AI, fantastic at automating tasks, terrible at automating jobs, because jobs require human creativity, they require input, they require checks and balances and all that kind of stuff, and they require interaction between humans, and who's better to do that than human beings themselves. So you've got this basically AI being embedded into tasks and supporting tasks. The more repetitive that task is and the more predictable the outcome of a task within a job, the more likely it is to be good for artificial intelligence or automation. Still leaves a big part of the job that can't be automated because it requires creativity. We can't automate this. We can't automate what we're doing right now. We can't really automate the setting up of this room today or any of these other things that we've done. So law's a big one. Tech is having some impact, but again, it's difficult to see the root cause for why that is and whether it's through AI. But instead of thinking about it as industry, let's focus on, does this require a lot of repetition? If it requires a lot of repetition, including things like data entry, that is the kind of stuff to be automated away first.
Yeah, no, it really makes sense. And yeah, I've heard similar around law. It's that kind of research, that repetitive side of it that, it could be taken over. But I completely agree with what you're saying around that. It's the emotional intelligence, the human touch.
Yes.
You know, that customer service side of things. We all hate it when we get through to a robot on the phone, when we just want to speak to a real person to give them our problem. And you can't do that again with AI. As much as it can be implemented, there is always still going to be that need for human interaction, like you say. Which kind of leads me on to, I suppose you've already touched on it a little bit there, but I suppose for a lot of our students or graduates or anyone who is in the job market right now or looking for a job, there is that fear around AI is going to take our jobs. Yeah. Is the fear realistic, or is AI more likely to lead to job transformation, like you've said?
I don't think it's a direct link. I like this question because we've got that belief that early career jobs, so jobs straight out of university, are having an impact, and there is a downturn in the number of those jobs available because a lot of the work that is required in that early part of the job is repetitive work. It's shadowing, it's filling out forms, it's filling out Excel, it's analysing information, it's doing all that kind of stuff. So there is some impact there. Again, I don't have a measurable number to say, okay, this is the impact. But I also think that there's going to become a time, so bear in mind, we're still early in AI, and I think there's going to come a time where we go, or actually a lot of this stuff didn't work. Or actually a lot of this stuff is so niche that we can't just replace swathes of people. Take law, for instance. Early career law is very much focused around doing some of those repetitive works and supporting senior members of staff. If you stop hiring down here, at some point you're going to run out of people to actually graduate and get up to those levels that require that basic support. So you can't just not hire, you can't just not backfill. Yeah. So all of these things, all of these roles and all of these jobs require that backfill. Is AI going to come for your job? As I've mentioned before, it'll come for your tasks, maybe, some of them. But there are ways in which you can differentiate yourself, and I know we're going to come on to some of that later.
Yeah, I think, it's also really interesting saying, about that talent pipeline for businesses. And, eventually those heads, those directors, those CEOs will have to retire or move on, etc. Yeah. And there will be potentially that gap where if, like you say, AI has taken over tasks or a role and someone doesn't know the ins and outs and the basics, it's then really difficult to make that next step up in what we consider a normal career journey to get to a director, a CEO. So it'll be interesting to see as we evolve, as the market evolves, what that looks like in terms of, the pathway's a little bit different now. Can you go into a more senior role a little bit easier? But there's a gap there of what we need that background to look like.
Absolutely.
So, interesting one. So like you've mentioned, we are coming on now to AI and recruitment and what that kind of looks like going forward. So from your knowledge of AI and the ever evolving world that it is, are employers using AI in recruitment processes, and what should students keep in mind when they're applying for roles?
Another brilliant question.
It's a double-ended one for you, is it?
No. So I'll give an example. I'll give an example because we recruited from the University of Manchester last year. And actually what we're doing is we needed some support with marketing, and we needed some support with because we're a startup, so we need some support in there. And we ran a competition because we didn't need CVs. We just wanted to see talent, actually, what it is that people can produce and how they interpret different scenarios. So that was what we did. We hired somebody who used AI as part of their submission. We did an interview and we asked them at the interview, we said, did you use artificial intelligence? And they said, yes, we used artificial intelligence and this is how we used it. And that was the person who got the job. We also had a pool of people that that we didn't hire. And some of what we noticed in there was a lack of authenticity in the message. So if you think about marketing and you think about the audience that you're trying to capture, and you think about what it is that's going to differentiate your company on a social media platform, you have to be really conscious of the authentic voice. Now, regardless of if you're doing marketing, I mean, sometimes we say that all social media is essentially marketing. But regardless of if it's marketing or you're applying for a job, we can look at our CV as our marketing piece. That's the thing that's telling somebody else about us. Is it engaging? Is it different? Is it unique? Is it real? One of the other things that it's really important for students to be conscious of is words that they use. So if you use an LLM to basically write your CV, it is so unbelievably obvious, because sometimes it will pick words that will embellish your CV that absolutely does not make sense for you to have in your CV. And a really good example of this is I was looking over somebody's CV the other day and they said they were a public orator. They're 18. They are not a public orator. I know that. They know that. Any future employee will look at this and go, this is not true. But actually, what they are good at is debate and public speaking. That's something that they are good at and they've got experience in through their courses. That is a true story. Saying you're a public orator, which is what the LLM has chosen to describe this, is not a true story. So when you are using LLM, suppose you want it to help you with sentence structure, with syntax, or with getting the message across, make sure it's authentic. Because when you do send that over, the employee or the hiring manager, or in most cases the recruiter, will see that and go, this is evidently nonsense.
Yeah, and I think what the two massive things I'm taking away from what you're saying there is definitely authenticity.
Yes.
Being a massive thing. And I think, from feedback we've had from other employers and reviewing applications myself, you've hired in the last year and we're always looking at students' applications. It's being able to see some sort of personality come through, and that's really difficult on a piece of paper.
Yes, it is.
But, being able to relate to the job or the company or some research that they've done or a charity that they work with and what that actually means to you.
Yeah.
That authenticity.
In your language.
Yes.
In your language is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think then the other side of it is, we know you're going to use AI. There's nothing stopping you. When you get in that job, you're probably going to be told to use AI. Yeah. So trying to be upfront about it in the first instance is quite important by the sounds of it.
Yes.
But perhaps using it as a starting point rather than your end point.
I use it as an end point.
Yeah.
I'm going to be 100%.
Okay, cool.
So I do all of my research and I do it without consulting any ChatGPTs. I order all my work. I know exactly how it's going to be. And then I run it through some sort of verification and it might give me a keyword that I haven't thought of.
Yeah.
But then what I do is, and the reason that I do that is because I don't want my critical thinking to be taken by a machine. I want to protect that. But anyway, that's for a different day.
Yeah. No, it's a really good point. It's definitely a skill we need to keep practicing, isn't it?
Yep.
So I think we've kind of spoke about how students can use AI effectively. That authenticity is really important. Is there any other tips you would give to students who might be applying for a role and that application is being reviewed potentially by AI? Do you know, are there any tips you'd give to help them stand out?
No.
No.
No. This isn't just an AI thing. We've at least for the last 10 years, there's been reviewing software that's involved. Particularly for early career jobs, there's a lot of software that's reviewing. I mean, be mindful of the keywords that are in your that are in the job description. Make sure that is matched to what you're trying to say. The sentence that you might be writing might be very similar to what it's in that job description. But essentially, you want the classic tools, tips and techniques that we were using 15 years ago, where we said, okay, how do we make sure that this is in the language of the job description so that the person that picks it up doesn't have to do any interpretation? So the information is right there in front of them. And please use bullet points.
Okay.
None of my CV is in prose. None of it. Not even the introduction. I do not have an introduction that says, here's a little bit about me, because it's not important. Okay. It's in bullet points. These are the top of the CV starts with 3 bullet points that match the job description and match what I can do for that job, which compels the reader to read the rest of it.
Yeah. So that tailoring.
Every
job you apply to.
Absolutely. And if you focus on bullet points, it's much easier to tailor than if you're writing sentences and reams of stuff, because we're not going to read it.
Well, it works both ways, doesn't it? If it's an AI, like you say, software that's reviewing it, picking out the words, or if it's a person that's reviewing it, I've been there myself, and you want to look for, okay, tell me why you were going to be the right person.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, the sooner you can nail that in that first page, the better. So no, definitely some good tips there. Okay, technical skills. We've started to touch on that, and kind of skill development. So what technical skills should students develop to stay competitive in the AI job market?
I don't think students need to think about being competitive in an AI job market right now. From a technical standpoint, I think it's important to have basic technical skills. A lot of jobs, for example, require PowerPoint and Excel. And we all know this, the joys of work. PowerPoint, Excel, and Microsoft Word. Be very good at being able to use those. Know how to use emails, know how to respond to emails, and all of that kind of stuff. But from a technical literacy perspective, in terms of AI, there's nothing in particular that students need to do, because actually the adoption rates of artificial intelligence in businesses is quite low at the moment, right? Some people report 15% adoption in the workplace. Some people report 7% adoption in the workplace. It depends which study you pick up. But again, if you read the headlines, you probably think 95% of businesses have adopted AI and they are absolutely on their way to the moon. But that is not true. So you must be technically literate, and you must have the appropriate skills for the job you're going into. And I've mentioned the 3 things that people need to know. The other thing that you need to know is how to be able to critically analyze the output that comes from any LLMs that you use whilst you do your job. And that is probably the most likely thing. So you might say, I'm going to use ChatGPT to help me write an email. It's really important you don't put sensitive information or sensitive business information in there, because you will get sacked. So those
really good tip.
That is the biggest, most important tip. If you're unsure, ask your line manager or something like that, but don't take risks like that. It is not worth it. And the other thing is, if you're writing a report, I want to point out that one of the big 4 companies essentially wrote a report for the Australian government, and they used an LLM to basically do that. Can't remember which one it was. And they put in some text in there that sounded really good, but it was factually incorrect, and they were fined in hundreds of thousands of pounds. Do not find yourself in that situation, even if you do go into the consulting market, which is really popular amongst new grads, right? So there's a lot of grad schemes out there that require you to consult. If you're client facing, do not send your clients things that evidently read like they're from a machine learning bot, because you're trying to build a relationship with these people. So you need to have that human approach. So these kind of things to be mindful of. Does this email I've written sound like me? Does it sound authentic? Does it sound like it's been written by a human being? Have I uploaded any information, whether client sensitive or whether business sensitive, into an LLM? And these kind of things that you need to be aware of. But generally speaking, it's a new technology. When the time comes to use it, you will be trained how to use it.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good point around companies. Like you say, out there in the ethos at the moment, it feels like every company is fully up to speed with AI, and it's fully endorsed everywhere. But like you say, you might be going into a company who are still quite cautious about it, and it's really important to be aware of those cautions. And if you have been using it really confidently to help you with applications and coursework, just try and rewind a little bit on that perhaps before you go hell to leather on your emails.
Yeah, absolutely.
Using ChatGPT, like you say, to put it together for you. Really check on, you know, what the endorsement or what the ethos is like within the company.
And make sure you're correct.
Yes.
Research. Make sure what you've said and what the LLM has confidently spit out at you and sounds really good, but it's actual nonsense.
Yeah, and there's always the little tagline at the bottom, isn't there?
Yes.
You know, this AI may not produce something that is fully factual and truthful.
Sure.
But...
Oh, thank you. Would you like me to turn this into a PowerPoint presentation?
Absolutely. So yeah, AI, I suppose those skills are really important. Are there any human skills which we think will become more valuable as AI advances?
All of them. Absolutely, definitely. Every single one. There's another talk that I give around the O-ring principle and about how the O-ring within rockets is basically the single most important thing if everything else works and the O-ring fails. And this is actually, it comes back to the argument of things like, we had electric whiteboards, and actually many of your students that are listening to this will come from an era now. Before that, we had whiteboards, and before that, we had chalkboards. I remember those chalkboards, but a lot of your audience won't. Now, the argument might go something like this: just because we've got an electronic whiteboard doesn't mean the teacher stops doing their job. Actually, the teacher can now focus on teaching better because they've got all of these tools and tips and everything else. There are certain things that employees have always looked for, regardless of which century you look into, and that is the value of hard work, good work. The value of commitment, the value of basically showing up to work, being present and doing your best, right? The value of being on time, and the value of willingness to learn and adapt to new practices and processes. That will stand out more than anything else. The other thing that has been highly valuable and that makes a person competitive in this day and age is if they've got differentiating experiences. And by that we mean, have you experienced the workplace? A student who graduates who has not experienced the workplace will have a much harder time integrating into the workplace than someone who has had some experience. Even if it's 6 months, even if it's voluntary, even if it's shadowing, it's something where you've been able to show that you've been able to learn outside of a university setting. Because a work setting and a university setting are two completely different things. So the more you can show that and more you can prove that and write a confident story behind it and then go, and this is how I transfer my skills into your workplace. That is the thing that has always helped and will continue to help.
Yeah,
more so than any AI course that you can take on Udemy. I promise you that.
Well, no, it's really positive to hear you talk about that. I mean, for our students at Aston, a large majority of them have a compulsory placement year. So as part of their third year of the course, they have to go and have some kind of experience in industry. So by the time they have come back and done their final year and then graduated, like you said, they've got that experience behind them a little bit, whether it be, a few weeks or a full 12 months.
Sure.
It's really important.
And really my advice is to really throw yourself into that stuff, because there'll be other opportunities that come out from that, where your employer says, oh, can you pick up this piece of work, or can you make this for me or that for me? I mean, the answer at that stage in your career should be yes. Yeah. 99% of the time it should be yes, I absolutely can. Because that is the thing that then leads to opportunities, and at some point you'll find yourself in the future where you're doing less of that. And then you can have a better work-life balance at some point. I haven't found it yet, but at some point, yes, that's the dream.
No, very ambition comes with those struggles, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, what would you say to students who may feel anxious about AI and the future of work?
I used to feel anxious about AI and the future of work. I used to feel anxious about my own job because I read the headlines. And then I went and I learned how it worked. And then I went and understood all of the ways in which humans are still better. I learned all of the ways in which we complement AI and AI complements our work. And I looked into the studies and I looked into the actual facts of what the real world impacts are. I also became better able to recognize what I was able to do that AI was not able to do. I was able to understand how I became more productive by using AI. So for the students that are anxious, I mean, we've talked to a lot of points. There's a perception out here. The slightly annoying thing is that a lot of the people that have the perception of the fact that they don't need to make these hires are the people that are decision makers. But that will resolve itself at some point. But in terms of addressing that anxiety directly, think about how you can showcase your skills, understand how you can write a CV, understand how you can get that experience to be able to show. So all of the advice that we've put together in this podcast today in a very short period of time is the kind of things you need to be doing to lower your anxiety, I think.
Definitely. No, I think you've given some, just a bit more of an insight, I suppose, as well into that, like you say, the perception of the clickbait, headlines that are out there that say that it's a lot of doom and gloom sometimes, but really what's the truth behind it, and what our industry, actually responding to AI? It's different.
There's a paper, and I don't remember the full name of the paper. But if any of your students or audience watching, Google for what if AI is, AI as a normal technology. It's called AI as a normal technology. It came out a couple of months ago, and it's the opinion with some references of two people who have put together how basically it's so similar to what we've seen in the past. And in there you've got tables and facts, and it's very readable. And then less of your audience will have access to The Economist, but in The Economist there's another article going, what if AI is a normal technology? And actually these are very recent articles, and there's a whole lot of stuff in the Financial Times and everywhere else. But read that, because that's where the metrics are. That's not headline grabby. That's where the actual information is.
Yeah, for sure. And then if you were a student today, what steps would you take over the next 12 months to help you? I mean, I feel like we have covered a lot of that in terms of gearing up, but what would your next steps be that you'd take?
Well, I'll go back to when I was a student. When we started approaching the end of my course, I realised that I needed to have those transferable skills, and that I needed to have something that was good for industry. So I knew that I wasn't going to go into academia. So a lot of what I did was, going ahead and learning and studying the things that I know business would want. One of those things was project management, for example. Businesses really like that. Understanding operations and understanding how a business works. Businesses really like that. And one of the things that I do that I'm absolutely not ashamed of is you have a fantastic business department here. I realised that in Manchester, I could just sneak into a business lecture and learn for free. So I did. I bought the Business for Dummies books, and I bought the Finance for Dummies books. And then when I went to work, I started talking confidently like I knew loads of stuff. But essentially, it's about preparing yourself. Are you thinking of going into a particular industry? What kind of things do you need to know to be in that industry? If you're not set on an industry and you don't know what to do, look at what employable skills are. All of those things that I mentioned about readying yourself, about being someone who's willing to put your all in, because that's actually what most employers look for. So in that situation, I would do what I did so many years ago, which is go and learn about something I find interesting that I think is going to be useful to business.
Yeah, there's a little bit of self-entrepreneurship there, isn't there?
Has to be.
To know, not necessarily knowing, like you say, the career, job title that you exactly want, but what do you genuinely find interesting as well is quite important.
Absolutely.
And just trying to, add to those skills that you already have.
I just want to say one final thing. Don't be worried or scared about writing to businesses directly. You can go as high up as you want. Most of the time, people will respond in kind. And I think this is a real worry that when we're young, especially, we go, oh gosh, this person's evidently really important. They're the head of so-and-so, and I don't know how to write to them, and I don't know what to do. Write in your language, write in your words, tell them what you're trying to achieve. Look, and please don't make it a really, really long email because this person's busy. 2 or 3 sentences. I go to this university. I've got my mind set on this. Your business is offering this at the moment. Is there any way that I can shadow, support, work experience, anything, and fire it out?
Yeah, I think we had another guest on the podcast a few weeks ago, and she gave a really good tip around those sorts of messages again. And one of her tips was around just being like really direct and really specific. So if it's only, I want 30 minutes of your time.
Yes.
Like the more specific you are with the request,
it's
the easier it is for that person to come back to you and say, okay, I can, I can't. This is what I can work with you on. But if you're a little bit airy-fairy with the request, and I would hope, the more direct you can be, obviously in a polite way, the easier it is for that business to respond.
And generally speaking, we don't need prose about your life. I mean, if we can just keep it to 2 or 3 sentences, and I really want to speak to you, as opposed to here's a paragraph of where I was born and what I've been trying to achieve since I was 17 years old. So all of that kind of stuff. So this is things that we typically see, right? And I try my best to respond to everyone who writes as well, by the way. But generally make it easy for us. Yeah. Ask for 15 minutes. We'll give you 15 minutes.
Definitely.
It's not a problem.
No, the more direct, the better, by the sounds of it. I mean, that is all. Are there any other closing thoughts that you wanted to share on today's podcast, Tahira?
be confident at this point, and I'm addressing your student population now. You can literally be anything you want to be. And I know that sounds really airy-fairy, but it doesn't matter. Half the job titles that you're probably going to have by the time you're 35 don't exist right now, right? My job title didn't exist 2 years ago. It didn't exist when I graduated. I didn't know that this was going to be the future. Remain adaptable and be open to new opportunities. Someone calls you up and go, oh, by the way, we could do this. Write it.
Yeah.
Get on it, do something different, explore, and continue to be curious after university. That's in my opinion, the single most important thing you can do.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of positive affirmations there, if you like, about keeping students going. So no, thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome. It's been a pleasure. I've loved it.
It's been lovely to hear about your journey, and all of the information you've shared has been really great. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that's all for today. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of From Campus to Careers. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and do share it with a friend, an academic, a colleague, anyone who you think might be interested. Don't forget you can book an appointment with our Careers and Placements team for one-to-one support through Aston Futures too. Thanks. Bye for now.